Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, the major motion podcast, where we talk about the biggest and the best films coming to theaters and streaming on the line and diving underwater for your viewing pleasure. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, film editor for InBetweenDrafts.com. And from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is a news and entertainment writer at Collider. It's Will Ashton. Hey, Will.
Hey, John. Guess what?
Yeah.
I see you.
That's part of the problem, isn't it?
I hear you.
I feel like this podcast has really gone downhill ever since we turned our cameras on. For a long time there, we had them off, and it was pretty nice.
Well, all right, fine. Starting off a little hostile. I don't know what this where this is coming from, but fine.
Well, you know, there was a time when you didn't know like my facial expressions. You didn't know how I was feeling about things. Now you read me like a book. You know me too well now.
I see you, John.
It's been I feel like it's been like a year now we've been doing that. I don't even remember when we started.
Hell if I know. I'm just here to talk about the movies. I'm not here to relitigate the history of the podcast and how we record these things.
Well, let's start with episode 1 of Cinemaholics. It was a cold 2017 morning. All right. So, this week we're talking about Avatar: The Way of Water. And I think that's going to be an interesting review because I don't know exactly what you think about it. I think you know what I think because I've been telling you. But you've been kind of coy, but we'll get to that, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
But first, I wanted to bring something up. I wanted to bring up a little bit of an off topic, as we're wont to do here on the show. And because, well, this is something, you know, I've brought up plenty of times over the last few years. We started this show really when streaming was starting to take off a bit, right? I mean, you know, not to do what you said not to do and get a little nostalgic about the history of this show, but yeah, from like 2017 to 2022, I'd say the last 5 years, the streaming era was in what some would call a golden age, right? And there are some people who are now saying that golden age is over because there have been some pretty significant developments over the last year. This week in particular, the main culprit being HBO Max, or Max as they're now called, just essentially removing a bunch of content from their service. Netflix announced earlier this year they're getting rid of Hemlock Grove and other things that were their shows, like Netflix originals, and they're getting rid of that stuff. And you and I have brought this up before, and the reasons for doing that, some people might say, like, why would you take stuff off of a streaming service? That makes no sense. Like, what's the point of that? And what tends to be the explanation is that if they do that, they don't have to pay residuals to the content creators. And we might be heading toward a situation where they might start to build out like contracts and things like that, so they never so that they could keep things on their service without paying people. Right. And so that's definitely a dark road that I think could be one we're going to go down. That said, Will, how are you feeling about the streaming era? Do you believe the golden age of streaming is over?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating in that it had a boon in 2020 where everyone was home.
Yes.
Everyone was streaming things because they couldn't go outside, they couldn't do things. So
Disney Plus was still in its infancy, but it really took off that year.
Yeah, I think a lot of like Hollywood content creators and producers, I think they saw that and they were, you know, coming off of 2019, 2018, 2017, as you were saying, you see like this rise and they're kind of like, oh, this is the future. And I mean, I think Netflix kind of learned earlier than some of these other streaming services that there's like a ceiling for what they can do. Like they're spending an astronomical amount of money, but there are only so many people who can subscribe to your service. It seems like there's not going to be an infinite amount of people who are going to get Netflix subscriptions. They're either going to, you know, borrow a friend's account, or, you know, there's only so many people in the world. And I mean, I think there are exceptions.
Now they're going to have ads.
Yeah, so it seems like they're going to have ads and they're going to try to produce things in a weekly fashion so that people don't say, you know, get a new subscription for the new season of Stranger Things, binge it, and then, you know, get rid of it. You know, they want people to kind of return to their service and, you know, keep a subscription the way that you would say with the cable package. And yeah, they're kind of just learning the lesson that TV learned so many decades ago. But in any case, I mean, yeah, I think with HBO Max, or as you said, Max, that's a little bit more complicated because it comes down to new management. And they're very clearly like, we prefer the theatrical experience. We want to make as much money as possible. We believe that, you know, people going to the theaters and paying to see our movies is always going to make more money than someone just buying a monthly subscription and streaming as much as they want or as little as they want.
They kind of panicked in 2021, right? They were like, oh, we need to release these movies alongside, theatrical, and they put it on the streaming service same day. And the people who were in charge of that decision, I believe, are no longer at Warner Brothers.
And I mean, also, like you said, like David Zaslav is like very cutthroat and just like, I don't care if people don't get residuals or whatever.
Right. He's a reality TV guy.
Yeah.
He comes from that world.
But I think I do find it fascinating that it seems like Disney is still pretty gung-ho about streaming and about keeping Disney Plus being a like booming and prominent part of their brand. And I mean, maybe they have made concentrated efforts to go away from that, but it hasn't been shown, at least for so far as I can see. And it seems like they're still, pretty confident in that. I mean, certainly the success of Encanto on their service shows that they can, appeal to younger audiences, kids who like to watch and rewatch their movies over and over again. It makes sense, I guess, for them to be a streaming service. But I think there was that point in time where everyone was like trying to get their own streaming service. And it seems like the reality is kind of hitting them like cold water.
The thing that we all said was going to happen in 2018 and 2019 when it was like, oh, we're starting a streaming service. Now we're starting a streaming service. And we're like, well, this isn't going to last. Like, this is not feasible. This is not sustainable whatsoever. And Disney's problem, right, was that they were releasing things like Pixar movies straight to Disney Plus, like Turning Red. And imagine how much money Turning Red might have made for them that they just bit the tooth on, whatever that expression is, right? Same thing with Luca and Soul. I mean, Soul was different because that was obviously, height of the pandemic. And then Luca was a little bit more in between. The vaccines were only just starting to get rolled out. But Turning Red, there was no excuse.
Right. And I guess I should say, for as much as Disney is still seemingly interested in building Disney Plus as their brand, they have also changed hands. And, Bob Iger just came back.
Bob Iger is back. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons is because I think that Disney is really annoyed with the way that the streaming service has taught people not to go to the theater. Because now people are like, I'm not going to go see Lightyear in the theater. I don't care. Because it's just going to be on Disney Plus in like 10 minutes.
Yes.
And the same thing with Strange World. Nobody showed up for it because people understand how it works now. And Kanto was the same way. So I think that I think what they were prioritizing with Disney Plus was we need to just build IP. We don't need the theatrical money to pay off those expenses. What we need are theme park attractions that are going to get people to come back to the parks because the park revenue is going down because of COVID stuff. So I think that now Bob Iger is coming back and is a little bit like, yeah, we need to build out franchises, but Disney Plus cannot be the only way. That's a drop in the bucket. And they are hemorrhaging money at this point.
And I mean, some of the decisions, I guess, made sense. Like putting Hamilton on their service in the summer of 2020 that made sense. But yeah, for the most part, I feel like the dream of streaming is starting to kind of backfire outside of their TV content. But even then, it seems like they've been prioritizing these Star Wars shows, and it seems like they're also kind of itching to make another film, but it seems like they've kind of cornered themselves into doing all this TV content that they're not exactly sure if, putting a Star Wars movie in theater is going to be the same. Still the sting of Solo probably weighs on them, but I don't know for sure. I mean, that's just me speculating, but I mean, the big question, I guess, for me is the influx of these Marvel shows, is that hurting their business as far as these recent Marvel movies? Because it seems like none of them are really making the same impact that like Avengers Endgame made, and that could be a variety of factors. But like even something like Black
any
Panther,
of the movies, I mean, even the movies that have come out since Endgame, I think have like there hasn't been like a show that really matches No Way Home. Or even, like, I would say, like, sure, like WandaVision and Loki. I think a lot more people saw that than they saw Shang-Chi and the Eternals. But I would guess more people saw Shang-Chi, Eternals, Doctor Strange, Thor, and those movies, despite all of the negative reviews, positive reviews too, but the mixed reviews for a lot of those. I'm sure way more people saw that than like Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel. And I think that saturation is obviously it's hurting their brand a little bit because people are getting sick of it. They're feeling like it's homework. It's mimicking the exact same thing that in some ways poisoned the comic book industry for these big comic book studios, because people are like, I can't even read a Marvel comic book. I want to read Spider-Man, but I don't even know where to begin. It's too convoluted. It's too confusing and complicated.
The market is just super oversaturated at this point.
Yeah, because then they also have to contend with the fact that people are way less interested in superhero movies than they were a couple of years ago. I think that has shifted a lot. And I was going to bring that up with Netflix, because here's something that I do like about Netflix's approach to things. Now, people will criticize Netflix because they do things that people don't agree with. You know, they greenlight certain things from certain people that, you know, some people would say that shouldn't have a platform, whatever. We don't have to get into that. But there are a lot of other people who are like, man, this is the place to go, where if you just want original content from a wide variety of different creative voices, that's where you're going to, you know, Netflix has sort of built a reputation for, if you want to be in the know, if you want to watch what everybody else is watching, there are breakout hits on Netflix all the time because they release so many things. There's bound to be something that kind of just kicks off. There's going to be like a Queen's Gambit sort of situation, or a Squid Game. There are three big ones, I believe, are Stranger Things, Bridgerton, and Witcher, right? And those shows have like really just taken off, and they have way more stuff like in the wings that they're developing, right? Yeah. So I think that Netflix, the way they're doing it is smart, but they are sort of at the same time kind of looking at us and being like, we do need to make some extra cash though. Mm-hmm. So if you'd like to donate to us Wikipedia style, I mean, they're not doing that yet, but I'm like, I wouldn't even be a little surprised.
Yeah. But I mean, that shotgun approach you're talking about, where it's just like shooting everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, is like, that means like at best, like 1 of 3 shows are going to like cut through the mold. And if that's enough to,
maybe 1 of 5, 1 of 10. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I was being a little generous, but yeah, I mean, that's still like spending an, you know, astronomical amount of money to produce content, most of which is not going to like really make much of a difference and probably go out forgotten, or, you know, worse, neglected and unseen. And I mean, I don't know if that's a sustainable business model if you're going to like, you know, most of your stuff's going to fail. But I mean, you know, like the movie business before the age of streaming and stuff like that would just, you know, make, you know, variety of films, and then if at least like a handful of them were successful, they could kind of, you know, make up for the ones that didn't, you know, reach that same critical or commercial success. But I just don't know if that's in the cards for Netflix at this point. They seem to be hemorrhaging money, and it seems like they're only going to be further in debt, even if they take on more advertising and stuff like that. And I mean, I don't know where that, you know, what the end game is at this point, if they can really kind of keep afloat, if they're still going to be hurting money that much. But I mean, you know, they're going to have to make some decisions at some point. What those decisions are still left to be said.
I'm sure some people are hearing that and they're like, yeah, all right, guys, but like, I'm not crying crocodile tears for Warner Brothers or Netflix. Like, they got cash, they'll figure it out. And I get that. Here's where it becomes real for the rest of us. The thing that we're starting to see more and more is that a lot of these shows, a lot of these movies that have only ever existed on streaming, many of which don't have any sort of physical release. There's no way to get a hold of them anywhere. A lot of this stuff you can't buy on, you know, like Google Play or Amazon or any sort of like rental streaming, right? They're just disappearing. Like, we're in the midst of that. Like, stuff is just gone. And I think that the most cynical part of a person like me or you can look at that as like, oh, that might create a little bit of a, if I have this Netflix subscription, I have to watch this now. I have to binge this now because it might not be there forever. And that is not a healthy long-term approach to this sort of thing, because then you run into people just not getting into anything because they feel like, you know, or they feel like they shouldn't subscribe because this stuff is so ephemeral and they really like something and they can't have access to it later. What's the point? And so, yeah, I think we're going to be seeing that more and more in 2023. That's going to be the big thing that's going to get people kind of like, screw this.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're like a creator, like either a creative personality or content creator, and you know that, like, I think that's going to be a big issue for Warner Brothers moving forward. Is that, like, I saw how you screwed over all these filmmakers. I saw what you did to the Batgirl team.
People are already saying that.
Like, what are you going to do to inspire confidence in, like, something I'm going to spend, 2 years of my life making. If you're just going to like, yeet it off the site, like a year or two later, like, I mean,
just so you don't have to pay me. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, that would be something that if I was a filmmaker, I would be weary about. Like, I don't know if I would want to go to Warner Brothers to have them greenlight my project, that they would even greenlight my project, because like, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen to it. I don't trust you at this point. I don't think you have my best interest at heart. So that doesn't inspire confidence in me wanting to work with you in the future. And I do wonder if that's going to be the case. I mean, I don't know. I mean, with Warner Brothers, I think it's going to be a bigger issue. I don't know if that's going to be the case with Netflix, because they're such a huge brand and they have so many, pockets that they can pay creators, even if they are hemorrhaging money. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely something that will potentially play out poorly in the near future.
The last thing I wanted to bring up, this is more of a big picture thing, but I've been thinking a lot about how some of this too is a bit of an overcorrection of the fact that there's too much content, there's too much stuff, right? And one of the reasons there's too much stuff is because the monoculture is essentially dead. And when I say monoculture, what I mean is there used to be a sort of unified national conversation around the things that come out back when there were like 3 to 5 channels. And that has obviously gotten larger and larger as time has gone by, as we've gotten things like cable, satellite television. Network TV has sort of subsided a lot, especially when these streaming services came on. And so the monoculture has kind of shifted a little bit to, okay, there are a few main streaming services that most people have. The problem is that, I shouldn't even say it's a problem, it's kind of a good thing that there's a lot of variety now. There's something for everybody, right? Because advertisers and streaming service people, the people who make the streaming services, I don't know what to call them, robber barons, they are looking at the landscape of who they can create content for. And there are so many demographics of people who want different things. So they're trying to create like something for everybody. And it's creating a lot of noise. It's creating a pretty saturated market. We see it with superhero stuff for sure, right? Everybody wants like their own Marvel thing. And yeah. I think where we're headed is like maybe this is a bit of an overcorrection and it's going to dial back down a little bit to, okay, maybe this stuff needs to be a little bit more curated, right? Maybe this stuff, like we've kind of seen it with the music industry a bit. When we started getting like streaming on music services and like suddenly like people could get access to like tens of millions of songs instantly, we started to see curation taking over the music industry's essential, like it was two things. It was the music industry started really gearing toward playlists, things like Discover Weekly on Spotify, right? And also live concerts started to really explode because people were missing that immediacy, that urgency. So I do wonder if, the movie industry, movies and TV are a little bit of a step behind that. That's just me wildly speculating, but that would be nice to see because the music industry, while it's still extremely in like a tough place right now, it's certainly that there are artists on there who have found ways to adapt and work around the system.
Yeah, I mean, another thing we didn't really discuss is that, for all this money that's thrown into making content, they're not supplementing the marketing departments to actually advertise these things. And
that's right.
You can make, any number of things for any number of audiences, but if they don't know about it, and you just kind of hope that everything you have is going to be the next Stranger Things or Tiger King, where the word of mouth just is produced organically, and you don't even have to pay for advertisement, and the fans advertise it themselves. I mean, it's not a really healthy way of doing things. And it's also just asking a lot of the fans to be like, you have to advertise this for us. Like you need to get the word out. And
you have to create a fandom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to stand these characters or else there may not be a second season. But I mean, it's just it's not sustainable, really. I mean, that's gonna, backfire in the long run because, there's a show like Joe Parra Talks With You, which is a beautiful, lovely little show, but that's not something that really, makes a lot of noise. And I'm very concerned for something like John Wilson's show because that's such a simple, pure little thing. It can't really be something bigger than it actually is. And I worry that that's going to hurt it in the long run. But I don't know. I mean, it does seem like you're saying that the streaming services are learning a lot of hard lessons they probably should have learned sooner than this. And, I think they didn't because of the pandemic and because they had a boost there. But I mean, they're going to have to figure some stuff out. And like you said, I mean, I don't know if it's going to be good in the long run, but we'll figure it out, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I hope one of these weeks we talk about all of this as it applies to podcasts because there's a whole other.
a market that's super oversaturated. Am I right?
Oh,
or am I right?
yes. Yeah, it's kind of dealing with the same exact thing. So, but that's got to be a conversation for another day, because the listeners have stuck with us this long and they're like, all right, let's talk about the most non-streaming movie of 2022.
Yeah.
Maybe besides Top Gun Maverick, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Avatar: The Way of Water. And we're going to talk about this movie the day that it hits Thursday previews. So we really don't know for sure how this movie is performing at the box office. We know the tracking numbers, what people are expecting this to make, and suffice to say, people are expecting this to be another gargantuan release. Maybe not as big as the first Avatar, but something in that ballpark, at least people are expecting. And there's some people who are saying if they crunch the numbers a certain way, it kind of has to gross, some people say, at least $2 billion just to be profitable enough to really make the whole thing worth it. I mean, it's one of the most expensive movies ever made at this point.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure James Cameron has said that this has to be like the third or fourth highest grossing film of all time.
And there are people who are like, oh, he's exaggerating. I don't think he's exaggerating that much.
No, I think
we should say, right, it's like 2.8 billion is the record at the moment, I forget.
Yeah, I mean, for as, lofty as his ambitions are, and how grandiose he is in terms of advancing and elevating technology in film, I think he is also fairly pragmatic about these things. And he's like, I recognize the cost that goes into this and the risk that's going to go into this. I think he's
a problem
known that,
solver.
Yeah.
It's the way he makes his movies. He looks for ways. He's cost effective, but also he will splurge because he prioritizes the experience and the spectacle, right? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about Avatar: The Way of Water, which is the sequel to Avatar from 2009. And this is the latest film from James Cameron. He hasn't made a film since Avatar in 2009. You can understand why. He announced pretty early on after the release of that movie, after it went on to become the highest grossing film of all time for about 10 years in a row before Avengers Endgame unseated it briefly. But then Avatar was re-released, and then, who's counting, right?
Right. I mean, I feel like James Cameron, I don't think is in the same pedigree as like someone like Scorsese or Spielberg, but I feel like he is maybe the most event filmmaker we have working right now. Like literally, like every movie he makes is an event, primarily because they're so few and far between, but also just like they have to be seen on the biggest screens. They have to be seen with a big crowd. You have to be immersed in them. And that's something that, I think no other living filmmaker has their advantage besides James Cameron right now. That's
fair to say. I mean, look, in the past almost 30 years, he's only made 3 movies, and 2 of them are the biggest films of all time. Like, let's just point that out. Now, a lot of people look at James Cameron and they say, to what you're saying, he's one of our most prolific event filmmakers. He just knows how to shop a premise to people, get people in the theater. And he does it in different ways with different movies. You look at something like Aliens and Terminator 2, that was really him in the late 80s and early 90s, redefining how special effects can make a sci-fi movie in 2 totally different franchises be an experience you have to go to the theater to see, right? Now, look, I forget how much The Abyss made. I forget how much True Lies made, right? But if you discount those, I mean, Terminator, Aliens, I forgot. He also made that Piranha movie, but I haven't even seen that one. I think that was his first movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Piranha 2, yes. Which he got fired from, I believe. Okay,
but he did work on it, huh? And The Abyss, I've actually never seen The Abyss, but I have seen the rest of his movies. And I would say that is his skill. He is just somebody who knows how to take an existing franchise with Aliens and Terminator 2, those were both sequels, direct sequels. And with Titanic, it wasn't a franchise, but Titanic was a cottage industry. It was something that people knew and understood and were familiar with that story. It was almost sort of like more of like an IP, I guess, in a very vain sense of the word. And then Avatar is essentially, as people criticized it, it was essentially like not an existing franchise, but it was an existing like movie trope, mix of tropes, a little bit of Pocahontas, a little bit of Dancing with Wolves, something that was very like classic, frontier American movie adapted to sci-fi and space and all that goodness that he feels really at home in. And so that many people will claim is the secret to his success. He knows how to sell it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a kind of funny thing about James Cameron is that he is, he has these kind of pet interests of his that he explores in some way or another with all these films of his of late.
He loves some water.
And he's, kind of a big dork at heart. Like, he's very sincere about the things that he makes. Like, he loves history. He loves water, as you mentioned. He loves, like these weird alien civilizations that interact with humans in ways both good and bad. And, like the future and how society will evolve or devolve with time, and how capitalistic pursuits and, imperialism will doom us all. And it's like stuff that, recurs throughout his filmography. And he's very particular. He's very meticulous about these things. But he's also a populist at heart, and I think he knows that like you don't really need to push the needle too far with the stories and characters that he's telling. You just have to tell big, grand, involving, sweeping stories with characters that you can feel familiar with and story beats that you recognize, but told in a way that you just haven't really seen before, and that really warrant the big screen experience. And that's something that he is just aced throughout his career. And you can, nitpick his films or, like criticize them for their writing or their dialogue or their cheesiness or whatever. But the man is effective. Like, he knows what works, and he knows how to play audiences, like a concerto. And it's just, he's a master in this very particular art of his, and you just got to give it to the guy. I mean,
you do. You got to hand it to him. And even the movies he doesn't direct. I think there are two notable examples of movies that he wrote or co-wrote, that being the Rambo, right? First Blood Part 2, and also Alita Battle Angel.
Sure. Like
Alita Battle Angel, a movie that should have just hit relative obscurity. I mean, that was a movie that was doomed from the start, but it was, I think, extremely watchable and quite an interesting experience. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit.
I like that.
And it has an extremely enthusiastic fandom behind it. Because to what you're saying, I think he knows how to just appeal to the inner geek in people. I don't know. It's a very profitable skill for the guy. He's done it again and again.
Yeah, I mean, he's in this weird sort of like hippie phase of his life where he's kind of like a dad who like has like this like project that he's working on in his basement, or like a novel he's been writing for years that is just very intricate. He put so much thought into the world of it and the characters and the environments that they interact in. And it's just like, it's very bizarre in its own weird way, but he just also just seems to know what people want and what they value and crave from a big theatrical experience such as this one. And I mean, I think he's just the type of filmmaker that you have to follow him through no matter what he does, because he's safe money in the sense that like I don't believe that every Avatar movie is going to outgross the next one. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where 3 lands and if 4 or 5,
which they've apparently already shot.
Yeah, but I mean I think it's smart to just let him do his thing. And, I think he's proven himself, as you said, time and time again. So I have absolutely no reason to doubt the man.
He's a fascinating guy. And even as somebody who, I don't really love any of his movies. If I had to pick a movie from him that that he's directed, at least, that I like the most, that I think is just the energy that really speaks to me as a person, I mean, I'm kind of a weirdo, and I think it's Titanic. I've always had such a soft spot for that movie. I think the people who criticize it, I'm like, okay, if you say so. Give me Titanic. I want more. Every time I rewatch it, I'm just like, I'm so swept up in it immediately.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that like people poke the story about as much as they want, but like you watch Titanic, you watch Avatar, you're in it. Like, I mean, like I rewatched that first Avatar movie. I didn't have the 3D this time or the big screen experience, but, even at home, I'm still able to engage with it. And like I said, just because it's effective, like it knows what it needs to do. It moves. It's slick. It has great action beats. Characters who are very broadly drawn, but engage you. And there's obviously very apparent flaws in that film, but the strengths far outweigh them.
And I'll say, this is something that I think a lot of people poke at him for his dialogue. I like his dialogue a lot. I'm one of those guys. I think his dialogue is usually pretty good. And I say that unironically, not even in a sort of like, oh, I'm laughing at the movie. No. I genuinely think that, I don't know, I think his dialogue is crisp and effective. Give me a break.
I'm of the mind that it really just depends on the day. I guess, like some days I'm kind of like, I'm with it for the corniness of it. The very direct way he has characters speak. But then other times it's just like, come on, man. Like you couldn't like, hire a dialogue writer. For
I
this
agree.
or
This
whatever.
is not Mad Men. We're not getting.
Sure.
We're not getting the Bible here, but we're getting
Right.
something, and I like it.
But speaking of writers, he did have a writer's room for this film. It's not just him by himself. He recognized, and I will give him credit for that. He recognized, for as big of a film as that first movie was, how massive and acclaimed and award-winning it was. There were very apparent flaws. A lot of it came down to his script. The script itself wasn't even nominated for an Oscar, despite all the other nominations it got.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, I'm going to hunker down. That was part of the reason why it took him so dang long to make the sequel, or the sequels to come, is because he was like, all right, I need a writer's room. I need to kind of like hone these scripts and treat them like, like novellas to come that are going to play out on the big screen.
Well, two things on that,
novels,
because
not novellas.
One of the reasons is because, and again, we could talk about Cameron all day long. I think there's a lot to talk about. Because we didn't even touch on his documentaries, but he's kept himself pretty busy with the documentary scene past couple decades. That said, I looked around, I watched some of his interviews just because I was curious about this. It's something that I haven't been following the development of Avatar 2 and 3 and all that closely. I feel like over the last decade, I've just heard, oh yeah, he's working on it, or, oh, they announced this and they're going to stick with it because it was the biggest movie of all time. And there's a whole like theme park dedicated to it in Orlando. So they got to keep going with it. It's franchise. But I never really like took a close look. And he has said like two of the main reasons is, he went to a team of writers and they were just like sending him scripts and developing it and tuning it and looking at how they could tell a story over the course of 4 movies. Because the current plan is to kind of do the Fantastic Beasts, sort of take where it's like a quintology, whatever you call it, and do 5 movies total. So from the first Avatar to the last, it's supposed to be 5 movies. And he's basically just dedicated the rest of his filmmaking career to this. And some people looked at that and said, why do that? And I think in his mind, the other reason that it's taken so long is because I think his main interest, this is me speculating, I think he's been waiting for the technology to catch up in a lot of ways. They weren't even able to do a lot of the motion capture, a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie underwater until like a few years ago. They shot a lot of this, I think, in like 2018. And then the pandemic is another big disruptor. He's said many times that like that was something that really, he thought like the movie might not actually come out, because they were not sure that people would be able to come back or would be willing to come to theaters for this kind of movie. And thanks to things like No Way Home and Top Gun and all that, I think the studio has felt more and more comfortable, this is 20th Century Studios, about bringing this together. But that's some of the backstory. Hopefully that kind of explains for people what's going on here, because I know for me, I was not excited for this movie. And I kind of went into it really not sure what to expect, honestly. And I think by the time you saw it, you probably there was a little bit more buzz popping off, right?
I mean, I was excited. Like I said, like where James Cameron goes, I'll follow. Like, I mean, I'm similar to you in that, like, I don't like love all of his movies in the sense that like I like the first Avatar. I don't think it's like a masterpiece, but I think it's really solid blockbuster entertainment. And I think,
but I'm gonna see his stuff in the theater.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I'm not gonna miss it.
Like I said, when he makes a movie, it's an event, and I don't mean that lightly. Like it's people just feel compelled to see his stuff again. I don't know what's gonna happen with this movie. I assume it's going to be another hit, but we're going to find out soon enough.
It's tracking to make around 500 million worldwide, which is not far below, I think, what Avengers Endgame made its opening weekend. I think that was like 650 million, I want to say.
Right. But I mean, to your credit, I mean, like, I think, I don't think this was a deliberate play in the broad sense, but like I do think the weight is kind of making it more impactful in the sense that like there is that nostalgia built in where it's like, okay, now Avatar is something you kind of like think back on. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that time. Obama was president. Things were simpler. I didn't have, like, life wasn't complicated. I can go back to Pandora. And that's the other thing too, is that, I mean, it's just such a, it's like such an immersive experience in that, like, part of the reason why, for much people complain about the characters and stuff in that movie, it's meant to be like you're kind of, being an avatar quite literally into this world and like getting immersed in this environment that's so fully realized and so thought through and so inviting and beautifully rendered. And, the idea of like, it's something you love from before, but now it's been elevated and there's new stuff in it, but it's also that stuff you love from before and it's coming back and it's bigger and better than ever, is I think an undeniable draw. And I think that's going to pay out so long as the film is good. But is the film good? That's the question.
And again, I hate to do this, but there's so much setup, right? We're just, setting up, but gotta also mention, one of the key things that brought people to the theater for the first Avatar, we've already touched on it, was the 3D. It was the real D 3D. It was something that people felt compelled to go see it in the theater because they had never seen anything like it. And after they had watched it, they knew that they probably wouldn't see anything again like this, at least not anytime soon. So they went back, repeated showtimes. And those ticket prices added up, obviously. And that's what people are expecting for this movie too, because the technology is, I compared it when I saw the movie to, it's like the first time you watch something on like an OLED 5K TV. And you're like, whoa, I didn't know like a picture could look like that. And it's really just like, it's really stunning when you first see it. And then, of course, if, the content does its job, then you kind of get sucked in, right? And I think this movie, Avatar: The Way of Water, is another sort of like step forward in that regard. It kind of takes that existing 3D technology and it takes it another step further. And I'm sure we'll talk about. But the other thing that we kind of have to caveat this with before we get into the tech, I know you want to geek out. I do too.
Sure.
One of the weird things about this is not that many, there wasn't a lot of merchandising. It's not a movie that has stayed in like the pop culture, lexicon as significantly as a lot of other things. They didn't really mine it that much. There hasn't been, it's not like Star Wars. Like there haven't been like spin-offs. There haven't been TV shows. There was like a video game that like nobody played. There haven't been a ton of books or anything. There have been that one group of friends in, that TV show. With John Wilson.
As I mentioned once before.
They've been holding down the fort.
Yes.
Like they've been holding on to this franchise for us, watching and looking after it, babysitting it while we were just off doing our own thing.
But I mean, part of that is just because it's just been gone from theaters. But then, like, when it came back earlier this year, like, it made, like $75 million extra dollars, that first movie?
Right, because to a lot of people, especially in other countries, a lot of people in America don't get this, and I brought this up before. This movie was a huge, huge pop cultural phenomenon and still is in Asia, especially China, also Japan to a large extent, because especially in China, because China opened up Avatar at a time. It was the perfect timing for when the Chinese government started letting people actually like watch stuff from like Western, filmmakers. And Avatar is Star Wars to a lot of people over there. For us, a lot of, we were a little bit like, okay, I've kind of seen this before, but there were a lot of people in China who were just like blown away by this movie. And I think that this is going to be like their Star Wars Force Awakens. I think this thing is going to crush over there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the reason why it's been kind of funny to see all these responses and think pieces throughout the years where people are just like, do we need Avatar 2? Like, and not even like,
you can't even name a character from the movie.
Whatever. Yeah. But also like the idea that like, the highest grossing film ever made, and not like by a fluke. Like people went back and again, they were just like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, is there a place where this is going to make money? And it's just like the highest grossing film of all time. I don't know. There's certainly a chance.
I don't see why you would bet against it, but okay. I mean, if the movie stinks, but I mean, I think they knew that they had something here, right? And they had to get it right, because otherwise you're squandering, a big moneymaker. And I think tying all the way back to my original point, I think James Cameron wants to use these movies to revolutionize filmmaking. I think that he's looking for ways to make like that. I think that's what he wants his legacy to be, to some extent, to essentially like also right the wrongs of how 3D was bastardized by so many studios after Avatar, sort of chasing the trend and trying to convert movies that weren't shot in 3D to 3D in order to make money, in order to like bring people back to the theater thinking they'd get an Avatar experience. And truly, like they kind of messed it up for everybody, because then who people stopped going to 3D movies as much.
Yeah, and it's funny because like he even went like, no, you guys do it like this, and he did with his own movie with Titanic, and they still didn't learn the lessons. Like they're like,
right.
Yeah. But he was like, I tried to teach you guys. If you're gonna do this, do it like this, and it didn't work out. So, I guess that was inevitable.
So let's talk about Avatar: The Way of Water. I know that was a lot of setup, but hey, look, this is like a 3 hour and 12-minute movie. So what do you expect? What's interesting too about this movie? I mentioned Star Wars: The Force Awakens, but it's not really like a legacy sequel, anything like that at all. It's just a sequel, and it takes place a little over a decade later, right? It's picking up almost in real time. I think more time has passed than 12, 13 years because some of these characters who weren't born yet are, I think, a little bit older. I think they're like 16, 17, but it's like similar enough, right? Like it feels like time has passed in both contexts. And we are really following the characters from the first Avatar, who survived at least, and their families and how they've sort of changed, how the world has, a lot of things have changed, a lot of things have stayed the same. So we still have Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington. I think, Will, you announced on every social media channel that Hollywood has Sam Worthington fever, right? America's. I saw him on like Jimmy Fallon in a couple of spots, and
was he? I haven't seen a single piece of like advertising.
He's happy to be here, Will. I think you'll be pleased to hear.
I just think it's so funny that like the star of the highest grossing film of all time is technically back. It's like, what's he really been doing the past 5 years or so? And like, I just haven't heard a peep about him, And
even part of the late night interviews, he's just sort of like, yeah, I grew a beard during COVID, and that's it. Like,
really?
That's all they really have been talking about with what he's been up to. I mean, he did like the Clash of the Titans movie and some stuff. Yeah. But, yeah.
Hey,
Zoe Saldana is the one who has been like busy. Yeah.
Yeah. And
she is a golden ticket in terms, like, if you are at a casino, like, go with Zoe Saldana because she has like the most unbelievable luck as an actress.
Is she technically like the highest grossing working actress right now?
I don't know if that's the case, but I mean she
like
is attached to the two biggest movies of all time. Possibly could be the top 3 of all time because of Avengers Endgame and obviously this movie. And she was in that same year as Avatar, Star Trek, which is also like a huge movie, right?
Yeah. And Pirates of the Caribbean, man, you can't forget that. And
she was, I know, right? But she was like pretty much an unknown when the first Avatar came out. She hadn't done a lot.
Well, I mean, Crossroads with Britney Spears.
What year was that? Was she already cast an Avatar by then, though? Because they were working on that pretty early on.
No, but I kind of half kid. But I mean, I think she was working. I just think she was working. She wasn't like
not a household name like she is now. I mean, I don't know if she's still a household name necessarily, but she's very well known. People are like, "Oh, yeah, Gamora! I love Gamora. Hi."
I mean,
Guardians.
What was it like? I can't think of any other like major star vehicles for her other than like Columbiana, and that was like 10 years ago. Yeah,
they didn't quite work out. I mean, I think she took a little bit of a break from acting, if I'm not mistaken, because she had kids, and I think let's see, because she did Adam Project. We just saw her in that movie you really liked, that you loved, Adam Project with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh man, that might be my least favorite movie of the year.
I mean, yeah, I mean she was part of obviously the 2 Guardians movies, the Avengers movie. There were 2 Star Trek sequels. I think like Columbiana, wasn't she also in The Losers?
She was, yeah.
Okay, so I forget what else. I think she was busy and like she was doing like smaller stuff around there too, but mainly he's been pretty busy with the Marvel stuff, Marvel and Star Trek.
Yeah, and Avatar now.
And now this. Yeah. And maybe Avatar 3 and 4. Well, we won't give it away because we don't know, right, what happens in this movie. But we won't be spoiling nothing. But yeah, so Sam Worthington is back, Zoe Saldana is back, Sigourney Weaver is back. Now, Sigourney Weaver's character died in the first movie, but they found a way to kind of bring her back through. Basically, like, they kind of did the Phantom Menace thing. What's that about? Can you explain that to me? Because I think they explained it in the movie, and I couldn't follow. Like,
well, like they kind of took her genes, Grace's genes, and like produced I
don't think they produced it. I think they said that it was an immaculate conception. She just had like a baby. Yeah. And this, by the way, we're not giving stuff away. This is explained in like the opening. Well,
there's some Christ allegories in this film. I'll definitely tell you that.
There are. There are, and I look at it, and I'm doing like a Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, where I'm looking up at the crucifix, and I'm being like, okay.
I mean, the funny thing about that is that you have like these kind of mythicism and religious allegories and stuff, but I also feel like this film does lean a little bit more into the sci-fi-ness of it, at least as far as like as a genre. Do you agree or disagree?
It's a little bit more quirky, and I think that one thing I noticed, and look, I've only seen the first Avatar twice, and I haven't rewatched it as recently as you have. Last time I saw it was on cable in 2012, right? So it's been a while.
The way that Cameron wanted you to see, of course.
Exactly. I watched it on my like Shrek TV. And I watched it, of course, originally in theaters, with the 3D and everything. But I gotta say, like, I was able to keep up with it because I remembered the beats. Like, it's not that complicated. Now, there were some things I kind of forgot that I was reminded of in the opening narration, where I was like, oh yeah, that's how that works, the neural link. And I'd forgotten they use their tails to basically like, mind take over creatures. Just kind of
sussy. How do you forget that?
I don't know. I mean, I've been busy. It's been a decade.
Sure.
But, it came back to me. I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right. There are some choice things I remember. I remember that he like loses his human body and becomes a Na'vi because of the spirit tree or whatever. I remember that they're Na'vi. I didn't remember their names, but that's fine. That's cool. And I still, when I was writing my review, Will, I was like, what were their names again? I couldn't really, like, I didn't know what they were saying.
Neytiri.
Jake Sully, I remember, but like Neytiri, I was like, the way they say it, I am deaf. I mean, that's part of it. I'm just like, Neytiri, and then I thought her name, the Sigourney Weaver character's name was Kitty. Apparently it was Carrie. Took.
It did sound like Kitty. I will give you that.
I thought the oldest son was Mateo. I
have some comments about the sons, and I don't know if I should voice them now or talk about it later when you actually give the synopsis for this film.
Right. I'm getting there. But yeah, so the setup is that it's been many years since the first movie, something 10 to 15 to 20 years, who knows. And if you remember in the first Avatar, the Na'vi, they were able to successfully drive away the humans and prevent them from destroying the spirit tree or whatever it was. And eventually the main characters, Jake and Neytiri played by Zoe Saldana, Jake played by Sam Worthington, they got married and they had babies, 2 older sons and a young daughter. They also adopted the Sigourney Weaver sort of like teenage character because she was kind of born randomly and no one knew how. Yeah. So they took her in, and then also they have like their goofy neighbor kid who is Spider played by Jake Champion. Yes. And he's a human who, he wants to be Na'vi. He hangs out with the Na'vi all the time, speaks their language, dresses like them, but he's human, and we find out that he is the son of the Colonel from the first movie when he was just a baby when his dad was killed, but he didn't care. He's just like, yeah, my dad sucked. And so he hangs out with the Na'vi, and he's a regular old little schmuck.
Wow. All right. Harsh words for Spider here.
Is schmuck a mean word? I don't mean it in a mean way. I mean, I'm thinking like dinner for schmucks. I don't know.
Like a tot. He's like a little rascal.
He's a little goofball. He's a little bit. He's like our like centrist. Like he's a little bit like he straddles the fence at certain points in this movie. I don't know.
Here's my thing about Spider. I think he looks like a Yazfied version of John Travolta's character from Battlefield Earth.
I did think of Battlefield Earth. I'm surprised you did too. Well, because he's got the weird dreads, and then he's also like naked for most of this movie, and I was a little uncomfortable. But I was like, all right, well,
I mean, the loincloth and stuff, not like he's not running around with his little tuchus out, but I get what you mean.
I mean, you see most of it. But anyway, the basic plot, though, is that the Na'vi are at war once again with the humans. The humans have kind of come back, and they're trying to take over again. And this time, though, Jake Sully, he's feeling like this is too much. I'm too scared to lose my family. I've done the good fight. I fought the good fight. I did what I was supposed to do. I'm going to, retire. I'm going to do what James Cameron did. He says that in the movie. He's like, what? James Cameron was able to just stop making movies, right? And so Jake takes his family and is like, kids, get in the van. We're going to the beach. And that's basically the plot. They go to this other Na'vi tribe that they're sea people. Because the Na'vi are like forest people. They have evolved and adapted so they can climb trees and do all that good stuff. But they go to basically hide out and seek refuge with the seafaring Na'vi, who then, of course, have to teach them, here's how you talk to whales, here's how you hold your breath underwater, have fun. And that's most of the movie. And a lot of it is like we're really not with Jake that much. Like Jake's in it. He's doing stuff, but he's more of the mentor character. He's more of a background kind of character. He drives the plot in some ways, but we're mainly following the kids. You know, we're mainly following Kitty, Carrie, whatever you say, and sort of her sort of spiritual awakening, figure out who she is. We follow a lot of the second son, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm going to look it up here. But the second son is, if I can find the actor, and I don't see it immediately. Okay, here we go. Britton Dalton is the actor. The character's name is Loak, something like that. And he's kind of the rebellious son. You know, he's a little bit like, you know, I don't even like you, Dad. I don't even want to be in this family. But he kind of deals with a lot of the schoolyard. He has like a little bit of like a crush on the girl next door, the Nobby next door. He's got a couple bully characters who are bullying him around and all that. That's a lot of this movie. A little bit of coming of age, a little bit more of like an overprotective dad trying to do right by his kids, and that's kind of it. I mean, it's not like Dances with Wolves was kind of like hanging over the first movie, where it doesn't have that direct of a reference, but it is essentially like a carbon copy of many coming of age family dramas that we've seen, though obviously with all the sci-fi and 3D spectacle stuff.
And you got like Princess Mononoke in there and a few other things. Like, yeah,
lots of anime inspirations, a lot of Studio Ghibli, a lot of Miyazaki.
Yeah, sure.
Now, in terms, there are two things about this movie: the story and the visuals. Those are the two things people are talking about the most. Not that many people I've seen talk about the music. Not that many people have been talking about, a lot of the actual, I mean, nuts and bolts of this thing. Besides, I think the visuals of it. The first question I have for you, though, Will, because this has been a point of contention that I feel like I'm on, in some cases, the wrong side of. Who knows?
You're going to ask about the 48 FPS, yeah, aren't you?
Yeah. So most movies are shot in 24.
Yes.
24 frames per second. And the reason is because we haven't talked about this much, but the reason for that is because even on digital, you want there to be some kind of motion blur. It's something that really helps with the immersion of film. It's what separates film from like a video on your iPhone, right? And it's just a trick of the trade, even films that are shot digitally, they do things to it to make it look closer to what a film would look like. They want to do that because there's a charm to it, right? In a lot of cases. Now, this movie is in 48 frames per second. So it has what a lot of people call like motion smoothing. It moves a lot like if you're watching or playing a video game, for example, on like a really, really nice TV, where if you're watching network TV on like a very high spec, HDR, QLED, like that kind of thing, you are going to get like really deep, crisp colors. And also it's not just going to be like we have the 3D of it is one thing, but then you also have like the objects in them. It is extremely lifelike in a lot of cases. Like it's sort of moving the way the person actually moves. A lot of people find it off-putting. A lot of people find it to be headache inducing. I love it. I think it looks really cool. I think that in a lot of cases it would not look very cool, because it wouldn't be on a strange alien planet. But I think because we are on a strange alien planet, I love the immersion of it. I love how it sucks me into this otherworldly place. And I think it really matches. But a lot of people disagree with this. A lot of people are like, don't watch it in high frame. A lot of people are saying like, if you have an opportunity to see it on like the regular, and a lot of theaters do have that as an option, people are recommending against it. I say, give it a chance. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. Go see the regular if you gotta. But I think that it's so unique and unusual, and it's something you've never seen before. I say take the risk. But what do you say?
Well, here's my stance on it. Because the movie kind of switches, right? Like some scenes are in like 24
that is true.
And some go into 48.
Yes.
I found that a little jarring, to be fair.
I found it seamless. There were only like a handful of sequences where I did notice it like too much, and it was more toward the end, and I felt like they probably just didn't have time with it.
See, I was more adjusted to it by the end. The beginning I found very jarring with the 48 FPS. I will say
my jaw was on the floor. I probably just didn't notice.
I will say for all the underwater stuff, I think the 48 FPS works beautifully. Like, I don't know if it's just because like the way the water is shown, or if it's just because it just fits that environment a little bit more. But I was totally hooked with it whenever they were doing like the little swimming underwater and stuff. I thought it looked fantastic. I was also keen on it whenever there were like action scenes and like bullets are flying towards the screen or arrows are shooting by. I thought it like quickened the action in a really compelling way. It made the stakes a lot more heightened. It showed the danger of the characters. It made me feel like, things are very, perilous while they were happening. I could really do without it otherwise.
Yeah,
and
we
that's
just
my
disagree.
take.
I say for me, I don't want to say it makes the movie, but I think I would have sorely missed it, and I don't think I would have liked this movie as much as I did. And I liked it. We haven't even said it, but like, I'm not in love with this movie or anything, but I thought it was a really fun experience, and I'm gonna go see it again next week because I want to see it again. It was a feast.
I mean, well, to answer initially, before I get into my thoughts on the film, I will say for the 48 FPS, I would suggest, because you gave your little recommendation, if you know you're going to see the movie twice, I would say first time watch it in 24 if you can watch it in that way. Then go and watch the 48.
I disagree. I think you should switch it.
Okay.
I think you should go for the high frame rate first.
I would have rather have watched the movie entirely in 24 first. Just to get involved with the stories and the characters. And then if I were to watch it again, watch it in 48 and see how that experience would have compared to the first.
We disagree, but listeners, it's up to you. It is your decision.
The choice is yours.
Yeah. Let us know. Please, people let it write in and let us know what you decide to do and how it turns out. Cause I really want to know.
Yeah. That's just how I felt. That's just my personal experience, though. I will say it seems like you have a lot more history with the 48 FPS. I don't. I'm just not used to that. I guess I'm not as accustomed to that as maybe you are. So I don't know if that
I don't know if I am. I didn't even watch the Hobbit movies. Wasn't that the last high profile one that did
I saw that one in 24. Likewise, that was my experience with Billy Lynn. I only saw that at home.
I didn't see that movie. So yeah. We did see Gemini Man. I did see Gemini Man in that up.
Okay, I saw that in 24. So I didn't see the 48 FPS for that one.
I think I saw it in 48. It's been a while.
The big thing I remember about that movie is that they said I think 3 to 5 theaters in the US were showing it the way it was meant to be seen, which is
that might be IMAX it actually. 3D, so then I might have just seen it. Yeah, I might have just seen it in 24 then. Okay.
Yeah.
It hasn't been done that often, we should say.
Yeah. Okay. I was kind of surprised that my screening showed it that way. I thought it may not, I thought it would be more of an exclusivity kind of thing.
I don't know how it is everywhere, but they did it for our screening as well. I was looking at how the tickets are going for in San Francisco, and most places it's the main thing. A lot of, if you're using different apps, it might be different, but I see a lot of okay, this is in 3D and it has a high frame rate. So they are listing a lot of that stuff depending on where you go. But I think the Regal close to me only has it in the high frame rate. I don't think you can even watch it unless it's standard. And then you can't watch it in the 3D and, without the high frame rate. I think you have to watch it in high frame rate for 3D at that theater. Okay. So I don't know how prevalent that is.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest. And I should preface, I saw this movie in Dolby 3D. That was the way my screening was presented. Yeah. So
yeah, it was an AMC Dolby House. Yeah. And it was the Real D 3D. And I wish I was kind of bummed because this was at the AMC Metreon in San Francisco. And a lot of the time they've put us in the IMAX theater for big stuff like this, like Tragedy to Macbeth. That was in an IMAX screen. I was like, man, I can't believe we couldn't. And I think it was because that particular IMAX screen, I don't know if it has the Real D sort of functionality that they didn't need. I don't know. Yeah.
Because when I had a screening for Wakanda Forever, they showed it in the IMAX, which is really a LIMAX, but the equivalent of an IMAX.
Oh, yeah. The one I'm talking about is a LIMAX that I did see it in. But this was a real IMAX that I was hoping. Like Tragedy of Macbeth and Thor Love and Thunder, I saw that also. And for real, takes up an entire skyscraper side of a building kind of thing. I don't know why I can't describe that more accurately, but anyway. Okay. One of these days I'm going to ask, how big is that screen? Because I don't actually know. I want to know.
All right.
So what are your thoughts on Avatar: The Way of Water? Ashton, do you think that it finds its way?
Yeah, I'm only an hour into this episode. Might as well share how I feel about this movie. Yeah, I was a fan.
That'll do it for our review of Avatar: The Way of Water. Let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game.
Yeah, there you go. No, I guess my expectations were certainly a lot higher than yours in the sense that like you were saying, I didn't walk away from that first Avatar movie through the roof like, this is the most amazing experience ever. I really was taken by it. I was like, I'm really glad I went out of my way to see this in IMAX and in
you
3D.
watched the trailer for the new one, right?
For this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the trailer, and
Okay.
the teaser is gorgeous. I mean, I think the teaser got me hyped up again. I'm like, yes, I'm going back to Pandora, baby. It's 13 years. Let's go. But yeah, no, I mean, I was just like, yeah, I mean, I was like, you know, excited, but also a little like cautiously optimistic. I'm like, I feel confident that Jim Cameron's going to do this, but I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if he can, you know, I can't say for certain it's going to happen, but I'm going to follow him, you know, to the ends of the earth and see what's going to happen. Or at the ends of Pandora, I should say. And yeah, I mean, I found it to be an incredible theatrical experience, but also I think, I don't know if I would say this is better or worse than the first one. I'm still kind of mulling it over because I like the efficiency, like I said, of that first movie. I like how it's more streamlined. I like that movie, it's a little bit easier to kind of connect with it. Like you said, no matter if you're watching it at home or on the big screen, I think you can really just get involved with that story in a way. At this one, it's a lot more, you know, open-ended in the sense of like there's more characters, there's a lot more going on, it's not quite as contained as that first movie, and as a result there's some things like I think Natiri gets underserviced by the story
Extremely so.
yeah.
One of my major criticisms.
And I feel like that's a big hindrance for this film is that like I think Zoe Saldana is still bringing it. I think she was the best performance of that first movie, and I think she's fantastic in this film as well, but I just feel like the story is just like so Jake Sully's focus. And to be clear, like I actually think, and I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I think Sam Worthington, you know, for as much as I was goofing on the guy, I think he really stepped up his game. I think he gave a good performance in this movie. I think he, you know, honed his craft
for him. Yeah.
And I think he like gave a pretty nuanced, performance here. And I think he, you know, gave a really layered, grounded, mature performance in a way that I felt like really, you know, I wasn't goofing on the guy. I was like, okay, this is like, you know, a good performance from you, dude. I mean, I'm impressed. And I like like it's a lot more layered as far as like, you know, it's very heavily about the fatherhood of characters, not solely related to Jake Sully, but we see with the Colonel, we see that with the other leader. I forget the guy's name.
Cliff Curtis plays. We didn't mention the leader of they're called the Reef People, and I got to be honest, I didn't know until after the movie that was Kate Winslet playing his wife. I had no idea. I mean, it's motion cap, and I didn't know that was Cliff Curtis either. I saw the credits, I was like, oh, okay. Hey, Kate, hi.
But I mean, I think what's saying about like legacy and history and honoring your elders, but forging your own path is not, you know, revolutionary, but I think it is a little bit more involved and a little bit more willing to be complex in a way that I feel like Cameron is really taking the right lessons from the criticisms of that first movie and producing something that feels a lot more organic and open-ended. And like, I do think that this movie does really advance that kind of uncanny valley thing where like you are watching in your brain, you know, that like 85 to 90% of what you're seeing is computer generated, but the ability to like make it feel really real and tangible is out of this world incredible in this film. And I don't know if that's going to age well with time, but in the moment, in the now, it just feels like the closest we've come to like being transported to a new place. And that's, I mean, very clearly the goal here with James Cameron. I think he, in that respect, really succeeds and then some.
Yeah, and I think the world building here to what you're saying, if you compare it again to video games, there are video games that have open worlds where you can go anywhere, right? But they don't feel real. They don't feel like you are that immersed. It just feels like a lot of empty space. And so there can be a lot of CG animated films, and in this case, it's obviously a hybrid, but they can sort of feel a little bit like most of this world I can't really get sucked into. That was like my main thing with some of those animated CG films like Vivo and Wish Dragon, the ones that were made for a little bit cheaper that they had nice stories, but like the worlds just didn't have that same texture, you know, they just didn't have that same vibrancy. And in video games, you have stuff like that too. I think that like, you know, but then you get something like Elden Ring, which is just, you know, a game that is just dripping with world everywhere you go. Every inch of it is just considered. And I think that this is that kind of equivalent sort of thing where I think Pandora is such a well thought out world. I think the story here, I think the messages are nice. I think that they are serviceable. I think there is something to it that kind of hit me a certain way. Like, I'm not a dad. Okay. Just got married. Slow down. Well, I know you're chomping at the bit, but I know for me, this idea of like when you're parenting and you want to protect your kids from the harsh realities of the world. the scary things that are going on. Even as somebody who can't directly relate with that, I was feeling for Jake Sully in those moments. And I was feeling like that real conflict between him and Neytiri of how to best address the situation, because she is a warrior at heart. She doesn't want to leave her home. She doesn't want to do all that, but she also, kind of respects, and she, I think, like, talks to him and actually they have like conversations that feel real to me, And I do think there are times though when her character does behave in ways where I'm like, well, it just doesn't seem like the same Neytiri from the first movie. But again, it's been a while, and so there were big chunks of this movie that I think that something kind of went wrong with the script, and I think that's my major criticism against it. On the one hand, I was not sort of feeling the runtime here. I was not sort of feeling like, when is this going to end? But I did just sort of, I noticed the editing a lot. I was thinking a lot about like, oh, they chose to do this scene, or they chose this scene to be 20 minutes long or whatever. And where's Spider? Like, when are we going to get back to Spider? I was outside this movie a lot. And it's kind of remarkable that usually when I'm outside of a movie like that, I'm not sort of liking it that much. In this case, I was liking it though. I was still kind of sucked into what you were saying. I wanted to know more about what's going to happen next. I wanted to get to the expected bombastic finale. And I kind of like the weirdness of this movie. I like the whales. I like that he went from like save the rainforest to save the whales. I like it.
Love the whales.
The whales were nice. And I saw some people making fun of the whales and I got upset. Like, don't make fun of the whales. They're probably like my favorite characters in this.
The whales, they write their own songs. They get their own subtitles. What do you not like about this?
I like that they were checking in with their friends and being like, how's your baby? Like, I loved it.
I
was like, give the whales more
4
screen
hours
time.
of that. I could have watched so much of the, the Na'vi and, well, I guess not technically the Na'vi, but like, alien whale interaction I thought was fantastic. I love that. And that feels like more sci-fi to me. Like, that feels like more like just like characters living in the moment, having like interactions in a way that just like, you're just in this world now. And this is like what they do. And this is how they interact. And this is their relationship to nature and animals and all that. And yeah, I like that a lot.
But like, that's the thing. It's like, even though the editing is way off, and in a lot of cases, big chunks of this movie where we barely see what's going on with Jake Sully, we barely see what's going on with Neytiri. I wanted more of them. I was like, if this is going to be 3 hours long, how come we're not getting more sort of like, how are they adjusting to things? Most of the time we are in this like reef area. It's more about the kids. And I kind of get it. Like, we already sort of got that with Jake Sully. He already has gone in that kind of story arc. So like, what do you even do next? But it did feel a little weird to me. It felt a little bit like those characters weren't as well rounded to me. And I was kind of missing that. But the nice thing is, I liked the kids. They were nice. They weren't annoying. Like, they weren't that great, but they didn't annoy me that much. And Loak, he almost had me. He was almost like, I was really thinking, I was like, ooh, you're an annoying kid. Just shut up. Stop doing anything.
Sure.
But he wins you over. He won me over. I don't know about you, but like, I think Cameron finds that even in the most rebellious teenagers who have something to prove and they make dumb decisions, sometimes people make dumb decisions, but it is rooted in a character trait that is really relatable. And I think he found that for this character. And I think it's what saves ultimately the story for me, because yeah, he's a rebellious little loser. He's a schmuck, as I said before, but he genuinely cares. And I think he cares about other people. And there was something to his character that was kind of surprised me based on the direction it was going in. Again, it's not that original, but I do think that it gets the job done. But are we going to talk? Are you going to get to Loak's hate club? Like, what are we doing?
No, I mean, for as much as this movie is about sons and fatherhood, and all that, I think the performance that actually really stood out to me was Sigourney Weaver's. And I don't know if that was just because I didn't really know what to expect.
She's my favorite in the family. Every time she was doing something among the kids, I was like, she's the coolest. Like, she's most interesting to me.
The Lisa Simpson of the family in space. It was just,
she's fun.
What's not to like? Yeah. And I was really worried that it was going to be like goofy or off-putting, and maybe a lesser performer it would have, but I don't know.
I was worried they were going to do a bunch of love triangle stuff with her and Spider, and I'm glad they didn't really go down that road.
But I really enjoyed all that stuff. The little one, I like that it was just like,
Took.
Took was just being sassy and like, just like, I'm here too.
Yeah, she was nice. Trinity Jolie Bliss is the actress who played Took.
Yeah, I'm cool with the sons. And this is, I think, where we're going to maybe disagree, is that I think they need to do just a smidge more to differentiate the two. Because when I was watching the movie,
I was feeling that. I 100%. I was like, I can't. Okay.
I don't know if they just need to like change the body type or something. They just like they're so. I mean, one has like a mohawk and one doesn't. I think. I guess if I'm remembering correctly.
Well, I think eventually you start to get it, mainly by like their voices, and then, but it takes time. Yeah,
that's what I mean. You just need to do a little bit more to differentiate them, just because like there'd be some scenes where it's like, oh wait, no, that's the older one. Oh wait, no, that's the younger one.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Jamie Flatters plays the older son, Nateum. That's the one who I thought was Mateo. That's what it sounds like to me. And he's a little bit more of a blank slate. He's like the perfect son, and there's obviously like the conflict where he wants to be like his dad, but he has to look out for his younger brother, and they kind of resent each other a little bit. Interesting stuff there. I get it. I'm sure. Are you the Nateum in your family, Will? Because you have your younger brother, and he's just a rebel without a cause.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. But
that's why he hasn't been on Cinemaholics. He's just too busy saving the whales.
Sure, there you go. But no, I mean, I think I was cool with the family stuff. I really want to know more about how you feel about the Stephen Lang stuff.
It's fine. I don't know.
I dug it. I mean, man,
sure. Why not?
I like that. Because like I think Stephen Lang serves his purpose in that first movie. Like he's just like he's corporate, Colonel Badass in that first movie.
And I'm trying to. I've been careful a little bit of like how much to reveal that because I don't know how much the trailer gets into it or shows him.
The trailer shows. I mean, like it's safe to say that like his consciousness gets transported into a Na'vi.
Yeah.
Which was, kind of speculated already, I guess, like given that he was coming back, it's like, well, how's that going to work? Because he clearly died.
And I think I heard that he's like in the trailer. Like you see him. They don't like make a point of it necessarily, but you see like a character who kind of,
His most badass moment in this movie is in the trailer, which is him holding his human skull, looking at it, King Lear or something, and then crushing it. That's such a that's such a metal moment. It's so amazing. And there's just like badass moments like that throughout this movie, man. And Cameron knows how to do the iconography.
He does. The gunfights I was feeling that you already mentioned, the 3D works so well with the action here, where I was feeling, a little bit like, remember like the old 3D stuff, like somebody would have like a paddle ball or something and the ball would come at you and you'd be like, oh my God. Like they kind of do that here, but with bullets.
Yeah. You're talking like the Spy Kids 3D route.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but in the 80s they had that too, right? But like the mechanical crab people underwater, they like reach out and I'm just like, oh no, watch out, and like I felt like I was gonna get splish splashed at certain points of the movie. I had a hard time. I was holding my breath at certain points of the movie. It's like, when get up for air. But yeah, I had fun at this movie. That's what it comes down to, and I think a lot of people are gonna have fun, and I think it's gonna make $11 billion.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, for as much you can kind of give or take the story, I just really enjoyed being in this movie. You know what I mean? I just like really enjoyed just immersing myself in this world and these characters. Like I said, especially the underwater stuff, but just in general, just like, I mean, just vibing with the movie, I feel like was like, especially the middle segment was just bliss. It was just like, I'm just digging this. I just like, being, kind of transported into this world that clearly Cameron has thought about so much for, like a decade and a half at this point, longer than that, honestly. And just like, just living in it and just being fully like, just immersed in the spectacle and the thoughtfulness and the creativity of it. And I mean, I think that's going to be kind of key to why this movie, I presume, is going to have that returning investment, is that people just want to kind of like go back and experience that, just like that support group and John Wilson. And I mean, I did think about them and I was just like, these guys, they're gonna feast this weekend. They don't even know what's coming. Like they're gonna be in the splendors of I mean, as
Pandora. We record this, they're probably watching it for their the second time.
I mean, I think because I think they have a Twitter account, and I think they saw like a premiere or something. So I'm excited for them to see it second, third, fourth, fifth time. I can't imagine how many times they're going to see this thing, and I hope they love it even more than the first movie.
Same here, and I'm sure, like them and many other people, they're going to be wondering what Avatar 3 is going to be about, because I mean, obviously this movie does not end the franchise. You already mentioned earlier that this is not as contained as the first movie. It's not standalone. It is sort of like, okay, we got more movies to make. There's some characters who show up here, and I think we're going to be seeing more of them. And I won't give anything away. I won't bring up who's who and all that, but there were some cameos. Let's put it that way. He was like, they are somebody who's going to be more important later, but it's nice to see that, this does feel like a franchise that has been thought through, that they do have like an overarching story. Not everything gets answered in this movie, and for me, that's okay. It's long enough, and I think by the end, I felt like I got everything out of it that I personally wanted, and I say that as somebody who didn't go into it wanting that much. I just wanted, as if it's a small thing, I just wanted to be transported to Pandora in a visual way that I can't get anywhere else. That's what I wanted, and that's what I got, and then some. So yeah, I'm a fan.
I mean, I will say, you are correct now. Like, it is establishing the sequels to come, or at least the sequel to come. But I don't want to make it seem like this is just like franchise heavy at heart. It is a pretty, engaging story throughout it. By the end of it, you do get a well-rounded experience, but it does obviously leave the door open for more possibilities in a way that first movie doesn't. And it's more self-contained in the sense of like you're seeing Sully's arc and all that. But yeah, I just don't want to like make it seem like that's like, it's just like, it's not like with the Marvel movies now where it's just like you're waiting to see a character that's going to be introduced 5 movies from now.
Exactly,
in full. But like, yeah, I think Cameron is just so he knows what he's doing, and I think he's also experimenting and just pushing the envelope and willing to risk it all for everything that he loves. And I think he's so earnest about this world, and I think he's so passionate about it in a way that doesn't feel like corporate interest. That's the thing for me, is that like if James Cameron wants to spend the rest of his career and his life making movies about Pandora, I'm okay with it as long as he wants to do it. Like I think he's not making 5 Avatar movies just because Disney is like pressuring to him. There might be some of that, but I think in full, I think he just wants to immerse himself in this world. He's thought about it so much. He wants to give back that experience to many people, and I think that's really what makes this franchise as it is, at least at this point, more impactful than like most others at this point, is that it's willing to give you what you love, but also do different things. And yeah, it's just it's a good James Cameron experience. It's good to have him back. And in 2 years from now or whatever, when we get Avatar 3, I hope the same can be said.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be another 13 years before the next one. They already shot a lot of what's to come because they didn't want the kids to age out, right? So they had to, sort of get that taken care of. But all right, I think that is our cue to play the Rotten Tomatoes game. Avatar: The Way of Water. We have 237 reviews counted. It's still pretty early. I think this is going to be one of those movies that gets into like the 400s by the end of the weekend. So we're kind of looking at it before I think we're really even close to the final score, but let's see what happens. We are recording this the Thursday of its release, so December 15th, just for everybody has context. So Will Ashton, yes. 237 reviews. What do you think the RT score is? Have you been spoiled yet on this one? It's been reported.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
At least not in its present state. I'm going to say 95%.
What I liked about that is that like you closed your eyes. It really felt like you were trying to connect with the spirits, your ancestors, in order to... No, it's not 95%. You're way off. Like, you're off by a lot. More than you have been in a while.
Oh, okay.
So...
Interesting.
It is an 80%.
Oh, it's much lower than I anticipated.
Well, you know what? There have been some critics who are just like, Avatar?
Oh, yeah.
Way of Water? Get out of my way. I don't want to watch it. A lot of like Guardian, Telegraph, we're talking about this. Like they're just like, nah,
yeah,
this ain't it.
I'm so glad I liked the film, to be clear, but there was a part of me that I was like, if I didn't, it'd be so cool just to say a watered down retread for like the kind of snappy subtitle for the review.
I haven't even seen that pun come through yet. Oh no, one of the first ones says everything here is retread. Yeah, okay, all right.
Well, watered down is the key, because it's
That's true. That's true. I don't say that anywhere here. But anyway, so 80%. What about audience score? We have 250 plus verified ratings. I think a lot of people have gone to like the promo screenings and stuff. That's probably where that's coming from. But what do you think?
99%, baby.
It is not. It is what you guessed for the critic score. 95.
Okay, 95. Okay.
Yeah, a little bit lower. I think it's going to change and shift over time. I'm curious, Will, do you think that 80% critic score is going to go up or down after the weekend? I want to say it's going to go up slightly. That's my prediction.
I think it's going to go up a little bit. I think
it went down from like its original because I think the negative reviews came, but I think most of the negative reviews have come. And I think what's left are like the people who didn't get invited to premieres and stuff. And I think a lot of the time they tend to be a little bit more positive. I don't know for sure.
I mean, I'm just not really, I guess, seeing like super negativity for the film. And it seems like 3 out of 4 critics are going to be like even lightly positive, just like, well, you can't deny it's a visual feast and like you got to see it in theaters and all that stuff. So 3 out of 5 is what I imagine like at least a decent number of critics are going to do, if not higher. So I would presume that score is going to go up to like 87 or something before it's all said and done, but who knows? Who knows?
I mean, I'm just looking at this review from Luke Goodsell, ABC News Australia. What good are the medium's most elaborate, awe-inspiring special effects of a film can't tell a story that's new or alter the way an audience experiences narrative cinema? And I gotta say, like, yikes, because it's not, it's derivative, but come on, like it's not new. Like, right. I don't know. I think that's kind of like a surface level criticism, but I've seen other criticisms that essentially are just like, not for me. And that's all good. But all right. What about Letterboxd? Because we don't have a cinema score yet. I'll double check. But I don't think we're going to get one until
it might be
a couple days.
Not until closer to the weekend is over.
Yeah, as we speak, they're turning in their Cine scorecards, whatever they are. So I can get some.
They're collecting their riches because they were betting on James Cameron.
That's right. They were slotting their machines.
Yeah.
But Letterboxd. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say 4.4.
Well, I haven't said how many people logged in and all that. So we have 26,000 have logged in, which is pretty high for, it's still only Thursday. So I imagine that'll go up quite a bit after the weekend. But okay, out of 0 to 5, and this is something that's going to probably shift and go up and down and up and down. Right now it's a 4. And I would have assumed that it would be at its highest right now, which is like 4.5. So I probably would have guessed around the same as you will, but no, it's 4.0. And you know what? I'm looking at the people I know who logged it. So I have like 40 people here. There are a good number of people who are just like, you know what? Avatar, I'm not going back to. They are panning this Pandora movie. Some of these people include like Adam Kempenaar, Robert Daniels, some people I don't even know if you know. Danielle Saltzman. He's usually very, very kind to blockbuster films. I was like, nah, this ain't the one. And other than that, I mean, I'm seeing 3 stars. Like Alex Dowd give it 3 stars. It might as well be 5 from him. Yeah. And I'm seeing lots of 4s and 4.5s. I imagine you're seeing the same. But somebody who's been on the show, Kristen Lopez, gave it 1.5 stars. 1.5.
Yeah, I saw her negative review, and I wasn't quite sure what the reasoning was, but I guess I can look into that.
Yeah, called it a tired rehash of the first film, and then also
not a
Isaac
watered down
Feldberg.
retread.
Huh?
Not a watered down retread.
No, I didn't see. I mean, I didn't read the whole thing, but it might. Isaac Feldberg also, a friend of the show, gave it 2 stars. But hey, that's the business. Sink or swim.
They said, "The way of water, no way, Jose."
What's funny too is like this movie is going to have a lower Rotten Tomato score than Puss in Boots 2: The Last Wish. I won't tell you what that score is, but you got a big hint on how that one's doing. Yeah. But critics are Paddington 2ing Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I'm
excited to see it. Excited to review it with my good buddy Matt Serafini.
Ouch. Yikes.
And Sean Negroni.
And so too little too late. All right, that'll do it for our show. Next week, we have some movies we could do. We could do Babylon. We could do Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. We could do The Whale. Sure. I think, it kind of depends on what you want to do, Will, because there's some options. I
thought we were going to do a bonus for Babylon.
I don't know for sure. I mean, I thought we were going to do a bonus for After Sun if we could wrangle it. I would like to do that.
Yeah, I'm down for that if we can do it.
Those are the main ones. I haven't seen Empire of Light. I do have a screener.
Yeah.
I just haven't gotten to it. I don't know if I will. But I don't know where you're at with that one. The new Sam Mendes.
I am curious. I'm not chomping at the bit.
Right. It's that's kind of where I'm at.
I think the trailer looks nice. The reviews have not been very nice.
No, they've been mixed. And look, part of it too is that like Christmas is almost here for those who celebrate. And
Merry Christmas, John.
I got a lot. There are a couple of neon things that I want to watch, over that. And also like part of the reason we're recording this on a Thursday instead of after the weekend is because I'm going to be out of town this weekend. And so I'm not going to watch anything over the weekend. So I'm running behind, Will. What am I doing?
Yeah. I don't know what you're doing, man.
Yeah.
But Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We'll talk about Whitney Houston. I want to dance with somebody. Same week as White Noise.
Yeah.
Not looking forward to either of those reviews. I am looking forward to talking about The Pale Blue Eye. That's one I hope that you watch.
Being shot here in Pittsburgh.
You can tell when you watch it because it's very dark, dreary, and you don't want to be there.
Yeah, you so and so.
Oh, also Bones and All. I knew we were forgetting something. Bones and All is the other one. Yeah, you just watched it.
Okay. So before this review wraps up, I was gonna say,
yeah.
How would you feel if Avatar? How some sequels like they flip it, where it's just like Honey I Shrunk the Kids. Second one's Honey I Blew Up the Kids. Mm-hmm. What if they had one where the sequel to Avatar was like, all right, the humans have become Na'vi. The Na'vi are now going to Earth to become humans. And it's like The Man Who Fell to Earth, but with like a Na'vi in like human form. It's kind of like Vincent D'Onofrio and Men in Black. And it's just like them awkwardly just trying to like get acquainted with human life. And they just kind of get depressed and isolated. And they realize that Earth is such a soul draining place. And that's just the second film. How would you feel if that was the film?
Thanks again for listening to Cinemaholics. You know what, Will? I think in about 10 years, maybe 15, we're going to have like a Space Jam 2 situation or a Chippendale Rescue Rangers where the Na'vi are going to be like a whole plot element of some contemporary like movie. And the joke is going to be that nobody knows what Na'vi are. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. But I think that it could, and that it would be kind of funny.
Yeah.
If there was like a Disney Smash Brothers, like Super Smash Brothers, but with Disney characters, I would play as Jake Sully. Yeah, and Neytiri. I'd do it. And their ultimate move would be when they come in on the flying. Anyway, thanks for listening to our show. If you'd like to send us an email and tell us what you think, tell us what you really think, just email us up, cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. And we'll see you all on the next one. From United California, I'm John Negroni.
And from Pennsylvania, I'm Washington.
I see you next time.
I see you, John.
I see you next time.